I stood at the altar in my grandmother's vintage lace dress, thinking this was the happiest day of my life. The church was perfect, decorated with white roses and baby's breath, exactly like I'd dreamed since I was 12 years old. 200 guests sat in those old wooden pews, smiling at me with tears in their eyes. My hands were shaking just a little as I held Derek's hands, and I remember thinking how warm his fingers felt against mine. Then my sister grabbed the microphone from the pastor and destroyed everything with 9 words that made every single person in that church gasp in unison. "I'm pregnant with the groom's baby," she announced. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was Derek's reaction. He didn't deny it. He didn't look shocked. He actually smirked at me, right there at the altar, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "At least she's not broken like you." Those words hit me harder than any physical blow ever could. Broken. That's what he thought of me after everything we'd been through together, after all those nights he'd held me while I cried about my diagnosis, after all his promises that children didn't matter, that I was enough. I stood there in my grandmother's dress, the same dress she'd worn when she married my grandfather 60 years ago, feeling like my legs might give out at any moment. The bouquet in my hands was trembling so badly that white rose petals started falling onto the altar steps. My mother Nadine let out a strangled cry from the front row. My father Warren shot up from his seat, his face turning purple with rage. Derek's parents looked like someone had slapped them. But me, I just stood there, frozen, humiliated in front of everyone I'd ever known and loved. My sister Simone stood next to Derek now, her hand on her still flat stomach, wearing that burgundy bridesmaid dress I'd picked out specifically because it complemented her skin tone. She'd been my maid of honor, my sister, my best friend since childhood. That's when I felt it. A small, insistent tug on the bottom of my dress. I looked down through my tears to see Hazel, my 7-year-old niece, still in her flower girl dress with the pink sash we'd picked out together. Her big brown eyes were wide with confusion and concern. She looked up at me with that innocent face that didn't understand why all the adults were acting so strange, why her Aunt Jenny was crying when this was supposed to be a happy day. "Aunt Jenny," she said in that loud whisper that children somehow never realize carries across an entire room. "Why is everyone so upset? Should I tell them about Mommy's secret?" The church fell even more silent, if that was possible. You could have heard a pin drop on those old stone floors. Simone's face suddenly drained of all color, her triumphant expression morphing into panic. "What secret, sweetheart?" I heard myself asking, my voice somehow steady despite the fact that my entire world was crumbling around me. Hazel tugged on my dress again, clearly pleased to have everyone's attention. "About why Mommy really goes to Dr. Johnson's house all the time. She said it was our special secret. But secrets aren't good, right? So you taught me that, Aunt Jenny. You said secrets that make people lie are bad secrets." I knelt down to Hazel's level, my wedding dress pooling around me on the altar steps. Behind me, I could hear Derek starting to say something, but Simone cut him off with a sharp, "Wait, what is she talking about?" "Dr. Johnson?" I asked Hazel, though I was really asking the question to the entire church. "You mean Dr. Mitchell Johnson, the psychiatrist on Maple Street?" Hazel nodded enthusiastically, her little flower crown bobbing with the movement. "Yes, the one with the big swimming pool and the pretty house. Mommy goes there all the time, but she tells everyone she's at work. She told me not to tell anybody, especially not Daddy Warren and Grandma Nadine. But everyone looks so sad right now, and I don't like when people are sad at parties." I looked up at my sister, who was backing away from Derek now, her hands shaking. Derek's smirk had completely vanished, replaced by a look of utter confusion. The entire congregation was leaning forward in their pews, hanging on every word this 7-year-old was about to say. "Hazel," I said gently, though my voice still carried through the microphone that had fallen near us during the chaos, "why don't you tell everyone exactly what happens when Mommy goes to Dr. Johnson's house? Tell them the truth, sweetheart, the whole truth." And that's when my 7-year-old niece, my flower girl, my sister's daughter, became the unlikely hero of what was supposed to be my wedding day. She took a deep breath, smiled at the crowd like she was about to perform in her school play, and began to speak in that clear, innocent voice that children have when they don't yet understand the bombs they're about to drop. "Well," Hazel began, clearly enjoying being the center of attention, "Mommy takes me with her sometimes when she goes to Dr. Johnson's house, but she makes me play in the pool house with his dog while they have grown-up time inside. I'm Jenny Caldwell, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had the perfect life lined up. At 29, I had everything I'd ever wanted, a job I loved teaching 3rd grade at Riverside Elementary, a cozy townhouse with a garden where I grew tomatoes and sunflowers, and Derek Morrison, the man who'd proposed to me on Christmas Eve in front of my entire family. We'd been together for 4 years, and I genuinely believed we were soulmates. Even when life threw us the ultimate curveball, Derek had stood by me, or so I thought. The diagnosis came 18 months ago, severe endometriosis that had gone undetected for years, causing damage that made natural conception impossible. I remember sitting in Dr. Helena Park's office, staring at the beige walls while she explained my options. Derek had held my hand through it all, squeezing it when the doctor said the word infertility. That night, he'd pulled me close in bed and whispered, "You're all I need, Jenny. We can adopt, we can get more dogs, we can travel the world. I don't care as long as I have you." Those words had saved me from drowning in my grief. My younger sister Simone had been less comforting. "At least you know now," she'd said over lunch a week after my diagnosis. "Better than trying for years and not understanding why." Classic Simone, always practical to the point of being cold. She was 26, 3 years younger than me, but sometimes she acted like she was decades older and had seen it all. Simone had her own complicated story. She'd gotten pregnant in college with a guy named Travis who disappeared the moment she showed him the pregnancy test. She kept Hazel, raised her alone while finishing her marketing degree, and never looked back. Our parents, Warren and Nadine, had basically moved in with her for the first 2 years to help. Mom would cook massive batches of food every Sunday while Dad fixed everything in Simone's apartment that Travis should have been there to handle. But lately, something had shifted with Simone. It started small about 6 months ago. She'd cancel our regular Thursday coffee dates, claiming work emergencies. She'd show up to family dinners looking polished and perfect, wearing new clothes I knew she couldn't afford on her marketing executive's salary. "I got a raise," she'd said when Mom commented on her new designer handbag. When Dad asked about the raise, she changed the subject to Hazel's school play. The secretive phone calls were what really caught my attention. She'd step out onto the porch during Sunday dinners, whispering urgently into her phone. When she'd come back in, she'd be flushed and distracted. "New client," she'd mutter if anyone asked. But what client called on Sunday evenings? Then there was her weird behavior around Derek. It started 2 months before the wedding. She'd always liked Derek well enough, calling him perfectly nice and good for you, but suddenly she was different. She'd laugh too hard at his jokes, touch his arm when she talked to him, and find excuses to be alone with him. "I need Derek's opinion on this marketing campaign," she'd say, pulling him away from me at my own engagement party. "It's for a real estate company, and he's the expert." Derek had mentioned it once, actually. "Your sister's being really friendly lately," he'd said after she'd insisted on driving him to pick up his car from the mechanic. "Maybe she's just excited about the wedding." I'd brushed it off, too busy with seating charts and flower arrangements to pay attention to the warning signs. The morning of my wedding was chaotic in the best way. My mother, Nadine, was in her element, directing everyone like a general commanding troops. Warren, "Help Uncle Pete with his tie. Colette, Jenny needs her makeup touched up. Where is Simone with the bouquets?" She'd been planning this day almost as long as I had, keeping a binder full of magazine clippings and vendor cards since I was in high school. My best friend Colette was doing my makeup in the bridal suite when Simone burst in, looking flushed and slightly disheveled. Her bridesmaid dress was wrinkled on one side and her lipstick was smudged. "Jenny, I need to tell you something," she'd said, her voice urgent. Before she could continue, Hazel ran in wearing her flower girl dress, the pink tulle bouncing as she moved. "Mommy, are we still going to Dr. Johnson's house after the party? You promised we could swim in his pool tomorrow." Simone's face went pale. "That's our secret game. Remember, sweetie? We don't talk about our special friends." She'd shot me a quick smile that didn't reach her eyes. Kids, right? Such imaginations. But Hazel had already moved on, twirling in her dress and asking if she could wear her tiara all day. I'd been too happy, too excited, too trusting to realize that my sister's secret would explode in front of everyone I knew in just 30 minutes. The ceremony started beautifully. The old Presbyterian church looked like something from a fairy tale, with sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the white roses I'd spent months choosing. Derek stood at the altar looking handsome in his charcoal gray suit, though I noticed he kept pulling his phone from his pocket, glancing at it before tucking it away again. His best man, Roger, kept whispering something to him that made Derek shake his head sharply. When Wagner's bridal chorus began, I took my father's arm and started the walk I'd practiced a dozen times. My dad, Warren, squeezed my hand and whispered, "You look just like your mother did on our wedding day, absolutely radiant." The guests stood, their faces beaming with joy. Derek's mother was already crying into her handkerchief. My cousin Beth gave me a thumbs up from the third row. Everything felt perfect, magical even, until I noticed the empty space where my maid of honor should have been standing. Simone's spot next to the other bridesmaids was glaringly vacant. Colette caught my eye and shrugged, mouthing, "I don't know," when I looked at her questioningly. My stomach tightened, but I kept walking, kept smiling. Maybe she was having a wardrobe emergency. Maybe Hazel had spilled something on her dress. There had to be a reasonable explanation. I reached the altar and Derek took my hands, but his palms were sweaty and he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. Pastor Williams began the ceremony with his usual warmth, talking about love and commitment, about building a life together through good times and bad. I tried to focus on his words, but I could hear rustling from the back of the church, hushed whispers spreading through the pews like wildfire. Then Pastor Williams reached the part I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. "If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever. Hold your peace." The church door slammed open. Simone stood there, swaying slightly in her burgundy bridesmaid dress. Her hair no longer in the elegant updo my mother had spent an hour perfecting that morning. She started walking down the aisle, her heels clicking against the stone floor with each determined step. "I need to say something," she announced, her voice carrying through the church with a strange mixture of defiance and desperation. "I can't let this happen without telling the truth." My heart dropped into my stomach. Derek's grip on my hands tightened painfully. Pastor Williams looked confused, glancing between us and Simone as she approached the altar. My mother half stood from her pew, my father's hand on her arm holding her back. Simone grabbed the microphone from Pastor Williams, who was too shocked to resist. She turned to face the congregation, and I could smell wine on her breath. She'd been drinking. My sister, who never drank more than a single glass at family dinners, was drunk at my wedding. "I'm pregnant," she announced, her voice echoing through the church. A ripple of confused congratulations started to spread through the crowd. My Aunt Dottie actually started clapping before she realized something was very wrong. The pause that followed felt eternal, like the moment between lightning and thunder when you're counting to see how close the storm is. "With Derek's baby," Simone finished, looking directly at me for the first time since she'd entered the church. The silence was absolute. 200 people sat frozen in those pews like someone had pressed pause on the world. I felt my bouquet slip from my fingers, white roses and baby's breath scattering across the altar steps. My mind couldn't process what I'd just heard. It was like trying to read words in a language I didn't understand. I turned to Derek, waiting for him to deny it, to laugh at the absurdity, to tell everyone my sister was having some kind of breakdown. Instead, he dropped my hands and took a step back. His face had gone hard, cold in a way I'd never seen before, and then he smiled. Not a nervous smile, not an apologetic smile, but a cruel smirk that transformed him into a stranger. "At least she's not broken like you," he said, his voice clear and deliberate, making sure the front rows could hear every word. "A real woman can give me children. You're defective, Jenny." I tried to overlook it. But why should I settle for damaged goods when I can have someone whole? The words hit me like physical blows. Broken, defective, damaged goods, each one carefully chosen to hurt me in the deepest way possible. This was the man who'd held me while I sobbed after my diagnosis, who'd promised we'd build a different kind of family together, who'd said I was perfect exactly as I was. My mother's gasp echoed through the church. My father was on his feet, his face purple with rage, already moving toward Derek with his fists clenched. But I couldn't move. I stood there in my grandmother's dress, humiliation washing over me in waves, feeling smaller and more worthless than I'd ever felt in my entire life. As tears blurred my vision and my legs threatened to give out, I felt a small, insistent tug on my dress. Through the haze of my humiliation, I looked down to see Hazel standing there in her flower girl dress, her face scrunched up with worry. She'd walked right up to the altar while everyone else sat frozen in shock, her little patent leather shoes clicking against the stone steps. Her flower crown was slightly crooked, and she was clutching her basket of rose petals so tightly her knuckles were white. "Aunt Jenny, why is everyone upset?" she asked, in that loud whisper children always use when they think they're being quiet. "Did Mommy say something bad? She told me we had to keep secrets, but you said secrets that hurt people are wrong." I knelt down to her level, my wedding dress pooling around me on the altar steps. The movement felt automatic, teacher instincts kicking in even as my world crumbled. Behind me, I could hear Derek saying something to Simone. Their voices urgent but too low to make out the words. The congregation was starting to murmur, a low rumble of shock and confusion spreading through the pews. "Hazel, sweetheart," I managed to say, surprised my voice still worked. "What secrets did Mommy tell you to keep?" Hazel looked over at her mother, then back at me. She was doing that thing kids do when they're trying to decide whether to tell the truth or protect someone they love. I recognized it from years of teaching, that moment when a child weighs loyalty against honesty. "Is it because Mommy lied about the baby?" Hazel asked, her voice getting louder. "She told me we go to Dr. Johnson's house to play games, but I know that's not true. I saw her kissing him last week, like really kissing, the way people do in movies, and she takes those special vitamins he gives her, the ones she hides in her purse." The entire church went silent again, but this time, the silence had a different quality. It was the silence of 100 puzzles pieces clicking into place at once. Dr. Mitchell Johnson, the psychiatrist with the perfect family and the sprawling house on Maple Street. The one whose wife Patricia served on 3 charity boards with my mother. "Should I tell everyone why Mommy really goes to Dr. Johnson's house?" Hazel continued, warming to her subject now that she had everyone's attention. "She goes there a lot, sometimes every day. And Mrs. Johnson doesn't know because Mommy parks her car around the corner and walks through the back garden." My mind raced as I processed this information. Simone's sudden new wardrobe, the secretive phone calls, the afternoon client meetings that ran into evening. But more importantly, if she was involved with Dr. Johnson, then what about Derek? What about this supposed pregnancy? I stood up slowly, my tears drying as a strange calm settled over me. The humiliation was still there, but underneath it, something else was building. Anger, not the hot, explosive kind, but the cold, clear type that sharpens your thoughts instead of clouding them. "Hazel," I said, my voice steady now and carrying through the microphone that had fallen near us during the chaos. "I think everyone here would like to know about your Mommy's visits to Dr. Johnson's house. Why don't you tell us everything? Every single detail you remember." Simone's face went white. "Jenny, no, please. This isn't what you think. Derek and I really did have an affair. Tell her, Derek. Tell her about us." Derek looked between Simone and me, his earlier smugness completely gone. "Wait, what? Simone, you said the baby was definitely mine. You said you hadn't been with anyone else. You showed me a pregnancy test." "There is no pregnancy test," I said, the pieces falling into place with startling clarity. "Is there, Simone? Or if there is, it's fake. Those special vitamins Dr. Johnson gives you, are they fertility drugs? Is that your game? Take fertility drugs to fake symptoms, claim pregnancy, and trap whoever seems like the best option." My father had moved closer to the altar, his contractor's hands still clenched into fists. My mother was gripping the pew in front of her so hard I could see her knuckles white from 20 feet away. But I held up my hand to stop them. This was my moment, my choice, my response to choose. You know what? I said, addressing the entire congregation now. I want to know everything. Every lie, every deception, every secret that's been kept from me. Hazel, sweetheart, you're going to tell everyone exactly what you've seen at Dr. Johnson's house. Every single thing. Because your Aunt Jenny is done with secrets, done with lies, and done with people who think I'm too broken to deserve the truth. The little girl nodded solemnly, clearly understanding this was important, even if she didn't grasp why. She took a deep breath, straightened her flower crown, and prepared to destroy my sister's world just as thoroughly as Simone had destroyed mine. Hazel, thrilled to have everyone's complete attention, became an unstoppable fountain of information. She stood there in her pink flower girl dress, speaking with the confidence of a child who finally gets to tell a story she's been holding inside for too long. Mommy goes to Dr. Johnson's house all the time, she announced, her voice carrying perfectly through the church, sometimes twice in one day. She tells Grandma Nadine she's at work, but she's really at his big white house with the swimming pool. Dr. Johnson has a special room with a couch where Mommy lies down, but they don't just talk like Mommy said. They do grown-up kissing stuff. Patricia Johnson, Dr. Mitchell Johnson's wife, stood up in the fifth row. Her face had gone from confused to horrified to volcanic in the span of seconds. "What did you just say?" Her voice was deadly calm, the kind of quiet that comes before an explosion. Hazel, oblivious to the mounting tension, continued cheerfully. "Last week was really funny. Mrs. Johnson, you came home early from your trip, remember? Mommy had to hide in the closet in Dr. Johnson's bedroom. She was in there for 2 whole hours. Dr. Johnson told you he was cleaning, and that's why the door was locked. Mommy showed me a selfie she took inside the closet. She was hiding behind his suits." The crowd erupted. People were on their feet, voices rising in shock and disbelief. Patricia Johnson was pushing through the pews, heading straight for Simone, who was backing away from the altar with her hands raised defensively. 2 months! Derek shouted over the chaos, his face red with rage. "You said we'd been together 2 months. You said the baby was mine. You showed me a pregnancy test last week." "There is no baby," Simone screamed back, tears streaming down her face, her carefully constructed plan falling apart. "Not yet, but there could have been. The fertility drugs were supposed to help. Dr. Johnson said they would make it easier to get pregnant quickly." "Fertility drugs?" Patricia's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "My husband has been giving you fertility drugs? In my house? In my bedroom?" Hazel, still standing beside me, tugged on my dress again. "Aunt Jenny, Mommy also has a special phone Dr. Johnson gave her. It's pink, and she only uses it to talk to him. She keeps it in her car under the seat, and she has a key to his house. She showed me how she can go in even when he's not there." My mother had finally found her voice. "Simone Marie Caldwell, you've been having an affair with a married man, and you tried to destroy your sister's wedding with a fake pregnancy? It's not fake," Simone protested desperately. "I could be pregnant. I might be. Derek and I really did sleep together. Tell them, Derek." Derek's face went even redder. 3 times. We slept together 3 times, and each time you said you were on birth control. You said you just wanted to hurt Jenny because she always got everything. You said you deserved happiness too. I stood there absorbing this revelation, feeling strangely calm in the eye of this storm. My fiancé and my sister had conspired to hurt me. They'd planned this humiliation, but their plan had backfired spectacularly. "Oh, there's more," Hazel announced, clearly enjoying being the center of attention. "Mommy and Dr. Johnson went on a trip to that place with the big mouse, Disney World." But she told everyone she was at a work conference. I know because she brought me back mouse ears, and I heard her on the phone telling Dr. Johnson how much fun they had at the castle. Patricia Johnson had reached Simone now, and for a moment I thought she might actually strike her. Instead, she pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "I'm calling my lawyer right now, and then I'm calling the medical board. Giving fertility drugs to a patient you're sleeping with? Mitchell's career is over. And you," she pointed at Simone, "I'm going to destroy you. Every single thing you care about, I'm going to take it apart piece by piece." "Wait, there's something else," Derek said suddenly, his face pale as he worked through the timeline. "Simone, If you've been with Dr. Johnson this whole time, and you've been taking fertility drugs, and you were sleeping with both of us trying to get pregnant, then who else were you with? Who else were you hedging your bets with? Simone's silence was damning. She stood there, mascara running down her cheeks, her grand plan exposed for the pathetic scheme it was. She'd been sleeping with multiple men, trying to get pregnant by anyone who might give her the life she thought she deserved. "There's Mr. Coleman from the bank, too," Hazel added innocently. "He came to our apartment last Tuesday when I was supposed to be asleep, but I wasn't really sleeping. I saw him leave Mommy's bedroom." The church exploded into complete chaos. 200 guests were on their feet, voices raised in shock and judgment. Patricia Johnson was screaming into her phone. My parents were trying to push through the crowd to get to Simone. Derek stood alone at the altar, abandoned and humiliated, finally understanding how it felt. And me? I stood there in my grandmother's wedding dress, watching my sister's lies unravel completely, feeling something I didn't expect to feel. Relief. Pure, overwhelming relief that I'd discovered the truth before legally binding myself to a man who could conspire to hurt me so deliberately. The wedding that never happened became the scandal that rocked Riverside County for months. Dr. Furrecott Keys Mitchell Johnson lost his medical license when the investigation revealed Simone wasn't his only special patient. He'd been writing illegal prescriptions for fertility drugs to at least 3 other women he was involved with, all while billing their insurance for legitimate therapy sessions. Patricia Johnson took him for everything in the divorce, including the house with the pool that Hazel had loved so much. Last I heard, Mitchell was living in a studio apartment 2 states away, working as a medical equipment sales rep. Derek tried to salvage his reputation. But real estate is all about trust and connections. Who wants to buy a house from the guy who humiliated his bride at the altar? His biggest clients dropped him within a week. The country club revoked his membership after Patricia Johnson had a few strategic conversations with the board members. He moved to Arizona 3 months later, telling people he needed a fresh start. Roger told me Derek still texts him sometimes, usually after a few drinks, saying he made the biggest mistake of his life. Simone's fake pregnancy turned out to be exactly that. The fertility drugs had given her symptoms that mimicked early pregnancy, including the positive test she'd shown Derek. Dr. Johnson had apparently coached her through the whole scheme during their therapy sessions, though he claimed he thought she was taking them to actually conceive with him. She lost her marketing job when the scandal made local news. Turns out employers don't love it when their executives become infamous for destroying weddings and sleeping with married psychiatrists. The strangest part? Mr. Coleman from the bank, whom Hazel had mentioned, came forward to my father a week after the wedding disaster. He was mortified, explaining that Simone had told him she was separated and going through a difficult divorce. He genuinely thought he was dating a single mother trying to start over. The poor man had even been considering proposing to her. My parents struggled with how to handle Simone. Mom cried for weeks, alternating between rage at Simone's betrayal and grief for the daughter she thought she'd raised better. Dad was simpler in his approach. He told Simone she was no longer welcome in their home until she got serious psychological help, from a female therapist this time. "You need to figure out why you tried to destroy your sister," he said. "Until you do, you're not my daughter." But the real victim in all of this was Hazel. That innocent 7-year-old girl who'd exposed the truth didn't understand why Mommy cried all the time now, or why they'd had to move to a smaller apartment. My parents and I made sure Hazel knew none of this was her fault. "You told the truth, sweetheart," I told her every time she visited. That's never wrong, even when the truth hurts. 6 months after my non-wedding, I was volunteering at an adoption fair at the community center, something I'd started doing to work through my feelings about not being able to have biological children. That's where I met Vincent Chen. He was there with his 4-year-old daughter, Ruby, whom he'd adopted from South Korea 2 years earlier. Ruby had wrapped her entire hand around his index finger, dragging him toward the face painting station. "Single dad?" I asked when Ruby ran off to join the other kids. "By choice," Vincent replied with a warm smile. "My wife passed away before we could have children, cancer, but I knew I still wanted to be a father. Ruby came into my life right when I was ready to love again." We talked for 3 hours that day. about how families come in all forms, about how love isn't defined by biology or conventional paths, about how sometimes the things we think are our greatest weaknesses become our greatest strengths. Vincent never once used the word broken when I told him about my condition. Instead, he said, "So you already know that being a parent is about so much more than genetics. That's beautiful." We married the following spring in my parents' backyard. Just family and close friends, maybe 30 people total. Hazel was my flower girl again, this time beaming with genuine joy. She'd started therapy to process everything that had happened, and she was doing remarkably well. During the reception, she whispered to me, "Aunt Jenny, this wedding is much better. Everyone is really happy this time." Simone sent a letter that I actually read. She'd been in intensive therapy. Diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and deep-seated jealousy issues stemming from always feeling like she was in my shadow. She wrote that she was sorry, that she knew sorry wasn't enough, that she didn't expect forgiveness. She was right. I wasn't ready to forgive her. Maybe someday, but not yet. Vincent and I are now in the process of adopting a little boy from foster care. Ruby is excited about becoming a big sister. My parents are over the moon about having another grandchild to spoil. Even Hazel, now 9 and wise beyond her years, has been helping us prepare the nursery. Here's what I learned standing at that altar in my grandmother's dress, watching my world fall apart. Being called broken by someone else doesn't make it true. It just means you were loving someone who couldn't see your worth. The right person will see your supposed flaws as just another part of your story, the part that made you exactly who they were meant to find. Sometimes the most painful moments become our greatest blessings. That 7-year-old girl's innocent honesty saved me from a lifetime of lies. Hazel gave me the gift of truth, even though it came wrapped in humiliation and heartbreak. Without that terrible day, I never would have met Vincent. I never would have found my real family, the one built on honesty, respect, and genuine love. As my dad said when he walked me down the aisle the second time, this time in his backyard under the string lights we'd hung ourselves, "You were never broken, sweetheart. You were just waiting for someone who could see you were already whole." If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear that their worst day might just be the beginning of something better. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a blessing in disguise moment where something painful led to something beautiful. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories about resilience, truth, and finding love in unexpected places.